Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is James Dermengian. I am a three-time world and national medalist Jiu-Jitsu fighter in the IBJJF and also an elite strength coach working with military, law enforcement, and Jiu-Jitsu athletes. I've been doing this thing for about 20 years in total as a fitness professional. I've got maybe 10 years combined wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu experience under my belt. And in the past 3 years, I made the move to fighting at the adult level just to sort of prove my service at 41 years of age to show people my age and younger that they are capable of anything as long as they put their minds to it and have good strength and conditioning. The tremendous benefit that strength and conditioning can have for a person. You can literally turn the clock back and, win fights against people half your age. This is something that's especially important for my military and law enforcement clientele because when you get into an altercation with a perpetrator or an enemy combatant, we don't decide what master's division you're in before we go. We take it to the floor, right, as it were. So in this video, I'm just going to talk about 10 of the most common and pernicious strength and conditioning mistakes that jiu-jitsu athletes, combat sport athletes, and first responders make when it comes to taking care of their strength, fitness, and health and performance. So let's just get right into it without further ado. Okay, so the number one most pernicious and stupid mistake that jiu-jitsu athletes and first responders make with respect to their strength and conditioning, guess what it is? Skipping their strength work entirely. This is so common and pervasive, and it blows my mind. And now there are some people in the history of the sport of jiu-jitsu who can get away with this. Marcelo Garcia, a couple other athletes who haven't, have just done more sparring and more drilling and whatnot and haven't spent time on strength and conditioning. But most of these people are born freaks, and most of us aren't. So you have to take that into consideration, okay? Skipping strength work is just the lowest hanging fruit, right? In terms of you upping your performance. As a testament to this, I've got about 70 matches in competition under my belt so far, and 32 of those have been finishes, okay? 80% win to submission rate, so I've got like just under 10 decision wins. Not a big fan of things going to decision. Most of my losses have been decision losses as well. But all of that having been said, the point I'm trying to make to you is, I've submitted about half the guys that I've fought so far, even at the adult level. And if you imagine for 1 second that my strength isn't like the deciding factor there, you're high, okay? So go back behind the 10th planet, where you train or whatever, and throw that joint you're smoking down on the ground and stomp it out, because you need to go home and think on what what reality actually is, right? Because it ain't, this world. We don't live in this world where strength doesn't equal finishing more fights, right? It almost always does, provided technique is adequate. Okay, now, second mistake, going too hard too often. Man, I heard it said by another influencer on Instagram that jiu-jitsu athletes are like crack addicts, right? We love to roll, spar. It's so exciting. Oh, strength work is so boring. Conditioning is so boring. Guess what, motherfucker? You're going to roll hard all the time because of the thrill, because you're chasing that BDNF or the dopamine increase, or the serotonin that comes after, or whatever the fuck it is, right? You're going to try and spar every single day. This is a bad idea, okay? Unless you're on all the PEDs, this is a bad idea. Some guys get away with it, right? Some guys on a sort of a moderate TRT dose of testosterone, which I put in scare quotes because most guys who say they're on TRT aren't replacing anything. It's just a euphemism for steroid use, right? Some guys can get away with sparring every day, right? But that can only last so long, right? And the sacrifice there for your average Joe who's not a professional athlete, granted there's no money in professional jiu-jitsu anyways, right? The sacrifices there are like your joint health, your long-term mobility, like being in pain all the time. If you're limping out of the training room because you spar every single day, it's time to cut this shit out, okay? And it's time to either work more on technique and dedicate some time to getting better, using whether it's drilling or task-based games or however you do things, and or get some strength and conditioning work in, right? The third mistake that I want to discuss is neglecting recovery. Okay, and I'm going to tell you what recovery isn't. Okay, recovery is not hitting an ice bath. Okay, recovery is not, just hitting the sauna. That may be a part of it. Okay, recovery is not just foam rolling, right? It's the most important thing you can do for recovery. Okay, eat well, eat healthy, eat enough protein, eat enough carbohydrate, get your macros. They don't have to be crazy dialed in, but good enough. Okay, hydrate and sleep well. Okay, those are the most important things you can do for recovery. Okay, I will add like a hot bath in there because that's literally, you conduct 30 times more heat through water than you do through the air. So a hot bath is far superior to sauna, right? Even though I use sauna quite frequently because I don't have a bathtub right now. But but the point is that recovery is really important. Okay, and so you can train as hard as you want. You can go balls to the walls, right? You can lift as hard as you want. You can spar as hard as you want. You can just take this whole mental toughness thing, mind over matter thing, to it's the point of logical absurdity, right? None of that's going to help you, especially if you don't have proper recovery. Recovery is where your body adapts to the stress you put on it, and this is especially important for strength and conditioning work. You have to get good sleep. You have to get enough protein, enough carbohydrate, enough fluids, enough water, right? And even things like electrolytes and stuff like that are important to consider. Okay. The fourth big mistake I see is overloading junk volume. Okay. And what does this mean? So we're talking about here just like doing more for the sake of doing more. This is kind of related to the point of neglected recovery, right? If your point going into any workout is, oh man, I just want to get trashed from this workout, you are not training soundly. Okay, you are not training soundly, and this is why doing 10 rounds of sparring every time you get the chance is a terrible idea, right? The quality of your work is no less important than the quantity. The quantity has to be dialed in to a level that's sustainable, that's effective, that's not going to put you into deep recovery debt. You have to be able to move tomorrow again, right? And if you don't take that into consideration and you're just like working out for the moment so you can feel that rush of endorphins, or again whatever it is that you're chasing, whatever dragon you're chasing with your workout, that's not actually helping you in the long run. Okay, the fifth mistake I see is ignoring mobility and stability. Okay, so mobility is easy. All you have to do is stretch for at least 30 minutes, preferably an hour a day. That's the reality of it, especially for us stiffer guys and heavyweights and stuff like that. Because jiu-jitsu especially is so much about hip mobility and shoulder mobility and all of these things. Having these things in droves can help you to be harder to submit, and also opens up different attacks, submissions, sweeps, that kind of stuff for you. Okay, stability is also important because the whole point of defensive jiu-jitsu is to not be off balanced, right? Because when somebody uses that kazushi and off balances you, that opens you up to being submitted, to being swept, to being taken down. Okay, so you have to work on stabilization. This can be doing some single leg stuff on the Bosu ball. It can be using chaotic methods where we're using suspended weight hanging from bands. It can be a whole host of different stability drills, just even single leg balances to start. But if you do that kind of stuff, it's going to be useful for you. Okay. The sixth thing that I see is jiu-jitsu athletes and first responders training too much like bodybuilders. Now, why is this a thing, right? Hypertrophy, muscular size is not necessarily desirable unless you are like 6'4" and 200 pounds or less, right? We don't necessarily want to gain size, okay? And the reason for that is increasing our relative strength. Our strength to weight ratio is just the key to being able to, number one, handle our own weight and to not fall into adverse, states of conditioning demand, right? And number two, to handle the weight of our opponent, perpetrator, enemy combatant, whoever we're fucking around with, okay? So we don't want to train like a bodybuilder and try to put on size as a primary goal. Rather, we want to use often, low reps on compound movements, somewhere between the 1 to 5 range a vast majority of the time for your core lifts. You can do higher rep stuff for your accessories, but that all depends on what you're doing and how you apply it. Okay, so but basically within the 1 to 5 rep range is ideal for getting that really good strength to weight ratio. Calisthenics are a different story, but that's something that we could talk about in another video. Okay. Number 7, avoiding sprint and plyometric work. You have to be able to explode. You have to be fast. You have to be quick. Speed even kills strength in many situations, right? Strength is the foundation, and strength is also the foundation for speed. But when you see like really elite athletes, the quicker, the faster they are, the faster they can get, to go, right? They will beat another athlete, all other things being equal. Okay, so sprint work, plyometrics, really important for developing explosiveness, quickness, and speed. Okay, sprints need to be used sparingly though, and so that's a topic that's important to discuss. And also there's a conditioning effect that they give, of course, like interval sprints, interval training. So you can go in bursts, right? You can push really hard for that 10 to 30 seconds where you are on the attack, or you're scrambling defensively, or whatever it is. Really important, but it has to be dosed properly. Okay, and a lot of people try and do a lot more of this than they actually should, to be completely honest. Okay, because in reality, it shouldn't be much more than 15 to 30 minutes weekly at those really intense heart rate ranges. So we're talking, zone 5, zone 6, right? But we can talk more about that in more detail in another video. Okay. Number 8 is going to be poor grip training. And guys, this doesn't have to be such a huge focus. If you just do normal barbell training, right? And if you just do certain standards like pull-ups, chin-ups, rows, pulling motions with heavy weight, deadlifts, and you use that double overhand grip for every set besides like your heaviest sets, right? You're going to train your grip very well. Okay. You don't need to go so crazy with it. Some people do get great results from using fat grips. I use them myself on occasion. Some people make this a huge point of focus, and that's super cool, and that can pay off in dividends, right? But the point is, like, you just have to do things in such a way to where you can incorporate that grip training into your normal strength and conditioning on the whole. That's the first step. And it involves, depussifying your core lifts, right? Don't use straps until the weight gets super heavy. Don't use straps in general, right? Use that grip, utilize that grip. And if you do that and you lift 3 days a week, you're in a better place than most, okay? Number 9 is skipping unilateral and rotational work. Single leg work is so important. Okay, single leg work is like the most important thing besides probably the core lifts, right? You want to develop flexibility in your hips with single leg work. You want to develop strength in your hips with single leg work. And we're talking about the abductors and adductors, right? So the groin muscle and the outer glute muscles, right? Because that unilateral, single leg stability that you get, right? Going back to stability is super crucial, not just for launching yourself into solid shots, singles, doubles, that kind of stuff, but also for making yourself flexible enough to hit those penetration steps, and also to keep yourself capable of balancing against your opponent's attacks. Okay, number 10, we're gonna say, is not periodizing your training, okay? And really not having a plan in general, okay? Periodization is a complex concept that like doesn't even bear on speaking of, because most jiu-jitsu athletes and first responders, when it comes to their training, they don't even have a plan, right? Y'all don't even think about what weights, exercises, whatever you're doing ahead of time before you go to the weight room. Like, I hear things from jiu-jitsu guys and cops and stuff where it's like, oh, just enjoying the weights, Would you ever do anything like that anywhere else in your life? Would you start an investment account and be like, oh, I'm just enjoying trading, right? Not tracking the numbers? Or would you trust an accountant who did your taxes? Like, oh, I'm just enjoying talking to the government about what you owe them. Would you trust them to not pay attention to the actual numbers involved here, right? So this is craziness, right? And I think it stems from laziness at the end of the day, and these kind of cavalier machismo, macho attitudes about things, where people just think they can do manly shit by feel, but that's not the way it works, right? If you want to actually grow in strength measurably over the course of years, right, or even months, even weeks, you have to track your numbers, know your numbers to grow your numbers. Okay. All right, y'all. That's all I've got for today. Listen, if you are interested in talking more with me about my coaching service, about any of these ideas, about how you can incorporate any of this into your routine so you can finish more fights, get on that podium at the world stage, or, get through a police academy, or transfer to a special unit, or go through special ops selection, whatever it is, get at me. Let's have a talk. You can DM me. You can follow me on Instagram. Whatever works for you. But let's talk. And I'll look forward to hearing from you. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoy this content. And we're going to make a big effort, a big push to grow this YouTube channel this year. All right, y'all. I'll talk with you soon.